Hi there. Welcome to e-learning Build a Course series. I'm Heidi Olson, and I've got Chris Becks and Owen Guthrie with me to help facilitate. I'd like to welcome you to the session, and we only have an hour, so I'm going to just jump right in and get started. And I am going to share my desktop with you and have you follow along. I'll share a URL in a minute in case you're interested in following along. So, make sure I'm in the right spot. Great. So, I think you are seeing my slideshow, and I'm going to be presenting just from within Google Slides, so pay no attention to the information on the left. That's to keep me on target. But welcome to a session on syllabi and prioritizing content. And like I said, I am Heidi Olson. I'm the e-learning design coordinator at UAF eLearning, and my contact information is listed there. And I'm really happy today to talk about this topic, and hopefully you'll find some good resources that will be helpful. We are recording using Hangouts on Air, so it is being recorded, and it will eventually end up on YouTube. And there is a Q&A feature, so if you look to the right of your screen, you should see a Q&A session where you can ask questions. You can also vote up questions, so if someone else poses a question that you're interested in, if you click on the little number sign, that will vote that one up, and the add question is at the bottom of that screen. So please feel free to add any questions you have or comments. So here is a short URL if you would like to follow along. This link is being hosted on iTeachU, which is our e-learning resource site. There's a copy of the slideshow, there's links to the actual broadcast, and then there's a whole list of links that have all of the resources and examples that I'm showing today. So please feel free to use that link, and like I say, that's being hosted on iTeachU, so it's not going away anytime soon. This is the first of 5 Build a Course series courses, and for the next 4 weeks after this, we're going to be looking at creating content and instructional materials, developing learning activities and interactions, effective assessments and measurements, and finishing off with functioning course technology and tools, all sort of to help guide a course development. So for the next 4 weeks, we're going to be having these live recorded through Google Hangouts, and then starting after that, we're going to repeat the series in a face-to-face room on the UAF campus at our e-learning offices. So stay tuned for those, and you know, we've created these to sort of help course development, so hopefully you'll find them helpful. So let's get started and get on our little pathway here. We have an hour, and then we're going to get cut off. So why are we here? What's going to happen in this next 55 minutes? So Albert Einstein says it is the supreme art of the teacher to awaken joy in creative expression and knowledge. So hopefully with the material here we're going to talk about, and with your expertise, we're on the right pathway of exciting our students and making learning and exploring something that they enjoy and can take with them as they move on through their life. So what does that mean for this session? We're going to talk about prioritizing content and what that means in your course development. We're going to talk about and look at ways to create a syllabus. We're going to take a look at the difference between a calendar and a schedule and provide some templates that you're welcome to use. Talk about options for publishing that information, getting that information to the students, and then also following up with available resources. So even before we begin to think about a syllabus and how to get started, we need to think about our course and what that means. And we have a lot of obligations already on us when we go to develop a course and put together a class. We have institutional goals, things like things coming from the institution, like the strategic pathways, where we have some critical goals that the institution has, as a whole, has felt important. We have department outcomes, which might be something like the writing intensive courses, the speech courses, other department outcomes that you as a department have deemed important. We have program alignment, so within a course or within a program, the courses are scaffolded so that students are mastering one concept before they're going on to the other. So you have those things you have to think about, as well as course objectives, which your approved objectives when your course was approved by Faculty Senate and the Curriculum Committee. You have those to think about. But then you also have your passion, you have your big ideas and understandings about the course, and you need to make sure that you aren't jeopardizing those and not giving your students the full benefit of your expertise. So let's talk just a minute about what those big ideas and understandings might be. Those are, definitely important. And as you're thinking about the course, we want you to step away from that textbook that has conveniently been divided into 16 chapters. We want you to think about what those ideas are that are at the heart of your discipline, that you want students to come away with at the end of the class or classes. These are the powerful sort of big concepts that make you interested and curious about your discipline and topic, and you want to make sure you're including those and sharing that your experience with your students. And we want to also make sure we're not just being, we're not having our students just be passive learners. We want to give them an opportunity to uncover the magic behind your discipline and topic, so that they can begin to make their own connections based on their life experience. So as you're thinking about these ideas and all of these things that you have to include in your course, it's important to also think about you have sort of a hierarchy, and you have things that you have content that students need to be familiar with. They need to know perhaps where to find information, things that they can look up if they don't exactly remember details. Just things that students have a small understanding, or at least have enough knowledge that they can make connections and bring that back to the content and to your topic. And then there's other things that are really important that they need to know and do. And then finally, there's the bigger ideas and understandings, which will carry the students through your course for sure, and on into many courses through a program. So the important thing here is what I was trying to get at, is that when you're spending time on building your content, think about these different areas and make sure that you're spending more of your time on the content building, on those big ideas and things that are really important, and less on items that are students just need to be familiar with. And then also in in sort of parallel to that is making sure that your students are spending time on the things that are really important, and you're not just creating busy work for student. You're actually having them spend the majority of their time on those bigger topics that will see them through. So following along with that idea, here are some sort of questions you can ask as you're working through the development of your content. From the student side, what do students want to know when they come out of your class? So if you've taught this course before, excuse me, you have an idea of perhaps what they want to know. What are the common elements that other students have said that they have come into the class knowing? And then from your perspective, what do they need to know? What do they need to know about your topic? And then from a program's perspective, what do they need to understand before they go on to the next level? So there's things that others are assuming you're covering and you're giving information about, so that they can build on that as the student progresses through a program. So you need to think about those three sort of aspects before you're really able to move on. You need something. You need those elements figured out before you're able to hang all the other things on, hang your activities, your assessments, the tools that you're going to use, interactions. You need to have that basis before you can move on. So let's say we know that. We've just figured that out. We've taken some time to think about all those objects. So where do we go from here? Aha, course and learning objectives, the favorite thing for all academics to figure out. Really, though, learning objectives are super important, and it's a way to model and organize your course. For you, it's a way to identify the material that you need to create or provide or develop in order to provide that support for your students. Objectives sort of clarify and help you decide what materials to use, and helps you focus your activities, your teaching activities, and your assessments. And then it also helps you to evaluate student understanding if you have some really good learning objectives. For a student's perspective, it provides them a guide for learning specific things. It provides expectations for what you want them to do, and hopefully will spark some extra interest on the student's side to see some depth and perhaps come up with their own objectives based on what you have provided. So learning objectives comes in two forms. You have course objectives, as well as, especially in an online environment, you're going to need module or unit or week level objectives. And together, these, well, for one thing, they should definitely be in alignment. So your module objectives should definitely support your course objectives. And we'll talk about that sort of throughout this whole series, but that alignment is really critical to make sure you're always you're always representing your big ideas and that information that that is important to your program and the institution. They all sort of come together.
I would jump in there, Heidi, and just tell our listening audience out there, if you're interested, feel free, if you're watching via the event viewer, on the right hand side of your screen there's a Q&A option. You can use that, and I just wanted to sort of underline what you're saying, Heidi, there about learning objectives. You mentioned that, it's sort of sarcastically that it's every faculty member's favorite aspect of learning experience design. And I came to learning objectives the hard way as well. It seems like, well, I just, these are the things I need my students to do. It seems always self-evident as to why you're doing the things you're doing. But it's a little bit like a blueprint, I think, for a cabin or something. When it seems obvious how you're going to build the cabin. You're just going to stack logs up or whatever metaphor you want to use, some structure. But when you actually go through the process of explicitly identifying objectives that you can then communicate to someone else, there's a power in that everything falls into place, and you can easily communicate to students what you're actually expecting of them, and communicate to yourself why you're doing the things you're doing them. And it makes the experience, especially an online experience, where you can't have a just 2-second aside and say, okay, now this is why I want you all to do this. It's sort of being explicit about that. So sorry to jump in on your presentation there, but I just wanted to say that is a good point.
No, great, thank you. I appreciate that, Owen. So let's kind of look at what makes a good learning objective. And there's sort of 3 or 4 pieces that really make a strong objective. And the last one on this page is learner, who will be performing, and it's usually the learner, so that's sort of a given. But if you base your objective around the other principles of performance, what do I want them to be able to do? And making sure that that's a measurable active verb that is going to guide the student into what they need to accomplish. Then there's a condition, and the condition is under what constraints do I want them to perform? So that might be using a specific tool. It might be based on specific materials that you're providing. It might be, if you want to specifically ask them to write an essay, that essay would be a 5-paragraph essay. That would sort of be your condition. So, how do you want to have this objective fulfilled? And then the criteria is how well do they need to perform for you to be satisfied. It might be like following 3 of 5 principles, or it might be based on best practices from a specific discipline or theory. So having that guide your learning objectives can also build a more rich and understandable objective. I've got some examples, so let's just kind of look at them. So an insufficient objective might be a student will appreciate the structural components of an architectural design. And sort of rewritten example could be correctly using the basic vocabulary of architecture and architectural history, which would be your criteria. The students, which is your audience or the learner, will identify, describe, and compare, and those are our active verbs that you can measure. The functional components of the structural design examples from this lesson, which would be the condition. And then I have a second example here. A better objective would be, after reading The King, which would be the condition, students will critique the protagonist's motives, which is the performance, using 3 of 5 criteria points discussed in class. That's the criteria. It takes some practice. I think probably the most important thing, though, is to use measurable active verbs to help guide you in your objective writing. And one way of doing that is by using a taxonomy. And here is an example of Bloom's taxonomy, which is probably the most most well known since it's been around since the late 50s. This is a revised taxonomy, but we have different categories, and within each category there's a sort of a suggested set of verbs that you can use. And here is sort of a wheel with different verbs and then assignment ideas. And I think with Bloom's, it's sort of arranged as a hierarchy. So, lower cognitive ability would be at the lower end of the fatter end of the pyramid, and then things that require a little bit more higher critical thinking and cognitive load are going to be at the top. So you want to make sure you sort of have a mix of lower and higher order categories, and depending on the level of your course, you might want to concentrate on one more than another, depending on the level.
I might just jump in there too, Heidi, just to intrude annoyingly, but just to say that I think from my experience, when I've heard people talk about their favorite learning experiences, they generally tend to reference courses that touch on a variety of aspects of what you might call a learning taxonomy. That is, they like to be challenged sort of across the spectrum rather than just a large rote memorization course, or a course that focuses on more free-form aspects. So
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, I agree with that. Another taxonomy, which is not really based on a hierarchy. I don't think. It's the facets of understanding from the big ideas, understanding by design, big ideas. And the thing that I like about this taxonomy is that within each of the 6 facets, you have different types of understanding, anywhere from naive, which is a superficial account or understanding, all the way up to a more sophisticated. So it's sort of multidimensional, but it still evolves around 6 different categories, and then of course each category has sort of a set of verbs and concepts that you can tie to that. So so those are sort of 2 different approaches to writing learning objectives and using for your assessments and other learning activities. I'm going to just skip the next slides, which basically asks you to sort of redefine a learning objective. But I think that in this case, we'll just skip that. You can do that on your own later. But I do think it's important that when you're, when you've finished writing your objectives, to ask yourself some questions to make sure that you're still, you're providing the best opportunity you can. So using action verbs, is it measurable or observable? Is it written from the student's point of view? So you're writing them for the students, so make sure it's not from your point of view. Make sure you're using appropriate language that is familiar to them and not academic-ese, unless that's appropriate. And then make sure that when you're writing your module objectives, you're thinking about your course objectives and making sure that they all jive. So in a quick 20 minutes, we've decided what the big ideas and what our course is going to be about, and we've written all these objectives, and now we have something, something to go on, right? We're ready to go. But maybe there's a little bit more. maybe we need to make sure that that we're challenging our students and we're giving them a complete learning experience. And I'm going to talk a little bit about information fluency. This is going to come up again when we talk more about assessing learning, but I think when you're developing your course and you're thinking about putting that structure together, you need to be thinking in advance and thinking about where your students are going to go. Information fluency is a practice of sort of a holistic look. So we have elements of domain knowledge, which is the content. We have elements of critical thinking, which is where students are analyzing, reflecting, they're integrating, they're taking that domain knowledge and personalizing it and chewing it up and creating things and delving into it. And then we have and then part of this is also the presentation and participation. That's where students are publishing, they're creating something, they're putting out a product, giving you a chance for some feedback, or getting a chance for instructor or peer feedback, and then creating something that is theirs based on their understanding of the domain knowledge and their thinking about it. One of the things about this information fluency model is often it can be, if a part is missing, then it's not that holistic view. So if your student is good at domain knowledge and critical thinking, they might have the learning, but they're learning in a vacuum and they're not able to present. And with that, they're not getting feedback or getting others' ideas in order to influence and perhaps make their understanding better. In the second model, if we have critical thinking and presentation and participation, we have rhetoric. We have someone who who's very good at presenting on the fly, maybe can speak on any topic. It's, is really good at the BS. And in the third category, if we have domain knowledge and presentation, then we just have someone sort of regurgitating what is already out there, perhaps in a different form, with really very little understanding. So I encourage you to look at the information fluency, and I forgot to mention I put the little short URL for all the presentation material on every slide. So I encourage you to go back and look at that information more in depth and check it out. So finally, we get to the syllabus, and we get to creating a product which is really going to help guide and build the rest of our course. And as I was thinking about this, I don't know, for me, I see the syllabus sort of as a starting and an ending point. When I'm working on a course or working on my own class, I might start with the syllabus and try to get as much information as I think is going to happen. I always revisit the syllabus after I've completed the course, because I know I've forgotten something, and often as I'm working through content and assessments, other things come to mind, and hopefully I'm making them better. So parts of the syllabus, can be done in advance, and you're probably not ever going to change, but you always need to go back and reflect and make some additions and corrections. So that I struggled with, what really comes first. It's kind of a chicken and egg thing. You go back and forth. But the syllabus is really what drives the course in many ways. It's the guide that, and it's going to be the first place a student is sort of conditioned to look at the syllabus as a starting place to find out what's going to happen. It would be great if students would read it, you know, before class or as the class starts, and then refer back to it, because we always have information that's important. I'm sure you all have said it's on the syllabus many times. Faculty Senate has provided a collection of requirements, and these are what you're required to include in your syllabus, and there's a link to that. Basic information, I don't think anything's new. There are a couple places that, especially pertaining to e-learning and distance learning, that I think you need to put more effort into than maybe you would in a face-to-face class, because it's not going to be obvious. And one of those areas is the instructional methods. This is where you're directing students on how to get started in the course, what the structure is going to be, what your expectations are for successfully completing a course. If you have activities that are sort of threaded throughout the course, like self-tests, just giving a brief description of what that actually means can be helpful. Guidelines for submitting assignments if it's not obvious, and oftentimes for students it's not. Expectations for participation for, with you, with other students, with the professional community. So I think Instructional Methods has a lot of depth to it, and can really help guide a student, especially if they're unfamiliar with your teaching or with taking an online course. Another area that you might need to be a little bit more in depth in is the course policies. What is your attendance policy? Perhaps it's an asynchronous class. You might still have some sort of participation requirements. Information on late assignments. Do you accept them? What's the penalty? What is your policy on advance notice? What about, sometimes students show up in an online course and then sort of disappear. When might you use the no basis grade if that is the case? Or when might you use instructor initiated withdrawal? Will you use it when? Having that information for the student up front at least gives them an idea of what you might expect of them. Incompletes, it's often, students get caught up in their lives and maybe need some extra time. Well, what is your policy on that? Understanding that for yourself in advance can also help you in case any of those occurrences arise. Evaluation is another area. Online students may not ask you specifically on evaluation, so having that figured out and provided for the student can be very helpful. Do you use grading rubrics? What's your policy on final grades, giving a plus or minus option, as well as instructions on how a student might check their own grades, especially if you're using the gradebook in Blackboard. Oh, snuck right ahead there. Luckily for you, e-learning has created a template that you're able to use. And a lot of this wording has already been added to the template. So you are welcome to use this template. It's been developed, or it's been designed so it's accessible, so the headings all are using the right codes. There's all of the blue italic is sort of instructions for you of what we're thinking about as far as these categories go. But you are more than welcome to, as it says, to make a copy of this document. Use it with Google Docs if you want. If you prefer a Word document, you can save it out that way. But this is a template that has provided some of that specific wording for you. What's the big difference between Faculty Senate required items and the eSyllabus template that we created? One of the biggest differences is the effort and student involvement piece. And especially for asynchronous online classes, you don't have seat time. And here is I'm not going to say equivalent or a replacement, because this is, because we don't want to compare those two delivery systems, but this is where your students are spending their time based on instruction, individual research, assignments, and collaboration. So these 4 places have sort of been identified of where your students were going to be spending their time. So coming up with the percentage of their effort is something that you should include in your class, and that is the big difference in the eSyllabus. So we have a lot of information, and one that we're including in a syllabi, and here are some examples of different creative ways to actually present that syllabus information. I'm going to just look at a couple of them here. Here is this is a syllabus based on an FAQ system. So instead of headings, it's sort of based on questions that students might ask. Here is an example of an illustrated syllabus. So if you are creative and are able to create something like this and think like this, this certainly is going to draw students in and make them interested and hopefully read and remember things that are on your syllabus. Here is a graphical syllabus created by Madeira Mason with some very cute graphics, sort of set up infographic style. And then there are some other examples that you should check out when you have time, and then an article for actually even more examples. So we also, going along with a syllabus is some sort of calendar or schedule. And I tend to think of those as different things. I tend to think of both of them as something with dates, but a calendar is more of actually specific dates on it, and it could be seen as a whole course. So you have like the whole course laid out in a calendar. And there is a template for that, and there's a template for the fall 2016 that you can use as a planning calendar. And a schedule is more unit or module based. So here is an example of a checklist that you could use with your unit dates, due dates, topics, and elements that you are going to have your students do. Or here is another example, a little bit more detailed with your actual activities. But once again, it has your unit dates or module dates and then specific deadlines. So you'll notice that both of those, or all of those, were shared through Google Docs. And once again, those are templates that you are able to use and download and make a copy for yourself and use for your classes. So so applications you might use for a calendar or a schedule would be Google Docs, which is which is what I showed you with the different examples. You might also use a Google Calendar to create some sort of schedule. And here is a look at a Google Calendar that I created in 2012. But it has, if I look at it in agenda view, I have all my assignments. And if a student uses Google Calendar, then they can share. I can share this, and then they can add it to their own calendar instance. Another way of having a calendar or a schedule is directly in Blackboard. And this is a class, and each of these assignments is actually specifically tied to a date-driven assignment in Blackboard. And my instance will look different because everyone's calendar is based on their user ID and which classes they're enrolled in. So your students will have a variety of course calendars for each of their classes. And you can populate it through the assignment and due date feature within Blackboard. And you can also add in customized dates. So I have links to how to create and then how to embed all of those documents. And hopefully that will give you some ideas about how to share those with your students. Another aspect is actually publishing. So I've created those documents, and so how do I present them to the students? So kind of going back to those same examples, so this is an embedded document, Google document, and it's a embed. Let me go back. By using a specific code, you can actually put. It's not a copy; it's the actual document itself in your Blackboard or your WordPress class, so that any changes you make will automatically show up. So it's almost like an alias where I have embedded my Google Docs syllabus into my Blackboard course. So anytime I make a change on the original document, it'll show up here. And this is really handy for making changes or making sure that students always have the most up-to-date copy. Another way, though, is to actually do a file upload, which here is a syllabus PDF that I've uploaded. This will actually provide a downloadable copy for the student, but then, if I make any changes, it's not going to update their hard copy. So there's always a chance for different information out there. And then this option is a line item with just directly typed into the Blackboard course. And this takes a little bit more time on your end, maybe, to copy and paste and format your syllabus, but it's right in line for the student, so they don't have to go anywhere else to look at the content. So those are kind of 3 different ways that you can integrate either your syllabus or a calendar into your learning management system, whether you use Blackboard, WordPress, Canvas, etc. Getting help. So I've gone through a ton of resources here. Once again, here is the URL for the slideshow, the recording of this event, as well as a very long list of resources that I've provided. So please take a chance, take some time later when you have more time to go through those, refer back to them when you need to. And if you want more information, you can contact me and we can find it and add it. And it'll be good to have that conversation. finally, just kind of want to end with some comments about, Socrates says, I cannot teach anybody anything, I can only make them think. And hopefully as you look back on the development of your course and all those elements that you've put together and those really great course and learning objectives, that you are providing a framework for them, for students to think and to be successful in your courses. I just wanted to give a shout out to Slides Carnival. They provide different presentation templates, and it's all for free. So this is a really great resource, and they have a variety of different templates you can use. I found it very helpful and easy to incorporate. Also, just want to remind you that this is being recorded, and it's going to show up on YouTube. So you can refer back to it later. And immediately following this session, UAF e-learning is hosting a virtual online lab, and for 2 hours, for the next 2 hours from 1 to 3, we're going to have the open lab. So if you want any individual assistance, or if you have questions and you want to join us in that virtual lab, here's the link for that. And this is something that we do every Wednesday from 1 to 3 on a weekly basis. So please take advantage of that support. And if you're just wanting to check in and practice Google Hangout with someone, do that. Or if you have questions or just want to talk about a topic, please join us. And also just a reminder that next week, Jennifer Moss is going to be continuing this Build a Course series, talking about content and instructional materials, and she'll have a lot of great tools and resources to provide you to get you on that pathway. Finally, thanks for joining us, and here's my contact information, heidi.olson@alaska.edu or 455-2090. Please send me an email or give me a call, ask questions. There was a lot of information in this session, and it went pretty fast. So please, refer back to the URL to get resources and information.
Heidi, I'm just going to remind anybody watching, if they're able to use the Q&A app, now would be a great time to submit your questions. And I did get one question directly texted to me, and the question reads, when applying Bloom's taxonomy, should it be viewed across the whole course or more across individual modules?
So in my perspective, I don't see why you can't use a variety of taxonomies throughout a course. I don't think you have to stick, if I'm understanding the question correctly, I don't think you have to stick to one taxonomy for the whole course.
Yeah, I think the idea is, do you build the whole course to address all levels of the taxonomy, or do you try and build each module to address all levels of the taxonomy? Yeah,
so I would say on a course level, you're going to want to address each of those areas. And depending on the level of course, you might have more or less depending on the level. And then I think also within a module, you want to have a variety of different taxonomies.
Yeah, I would agree with you. It's the same basic thing. If a module is also represents usually some unit of time, you don't want to just drill down and spend a lot of time remembering. Although some courses require that, it'd be nice to have some moments where the students are allowed to do a little more creative thought or application of the material or something like that.
Yeah. So I guess I'm not sure that wasn't a definite answer, but
I think it is. I think it's there. Basically, you want a diversity of types of student engagement at all times, if you can. Yeah. Yeah, that really was a lot in that presentation. I was watching through it and thinking, wow, this is a lot for someone to swallow in one go. So the good thing is we're here, and yeah, Heidi gave her contact information, and reach out if you have questions.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I got confirmation that answered the question, so
Okay.
we're good.
Okay, well, I think it would be really good if you are watching at any point to send an email and give some suggestions. If you have questions, or if you have some resources you'd like us to share out, that would be great. It's really good to have a conversation going. If you have had some really great experiences with a specific type of syllabus or a calendar, having those ideas. This is all about having a conversation and learning from one another. So please reach out, and hopefully we're all making a better learning experience for our students.
Yeah, between the open labs and the virtual labs and this series of video presentations or online presentations, there's a lot of opportunities to connect, and it's a huge thing. Any one of several topics you addressed lightly could have been a whole presentation in and of itself. So, and some of them are often presentations we give during iTeach and things. So it'd be great to drill down on some of those topics.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, well, I don't think we have any more questions right now, so I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. But I really, again, encourage you to get with us and use our services, and continue that conversation.
Thanks, Heidi.
Okay, thank you, Owen. Bye-bye.